unlikely to happen, but hey, it's college football. Anything can happen. But Oklahoma State, they've kind of fallen off a little bit. So I think this conference is Oklahoma's to lose, really. They're coming off a big win against Alabama last year, so they've definitely got the talent to compete, and I think any rational individual will probably put them up there as far as contenders for the national title this year. So, but to me, Oklahoma is by far the biggest threat in that conference. Number 4, I'm going to go with the Big Ten. The two obvious teams in that conference is Ohio State and Michigan State. But there again, they really don't play a whole lot of top tier competition. They moved Nebraska over there to try to compete with these guys, but even Nebraska just hasn't been able to do much. And I know they beat us last year, that being the Nebraska-Georgia game in the bowl season, but I just don't know, man. It's just like Bo Pelini has shown some flashes, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump. They suffer from a lot of the same problems Georgia does, actually. I mean, that's actually kind of scary. It's like both teams a lot of times have high expectations to do things, and they just never seem to get over that hump. Nebraska's consistent. I will say that they're a constant 8-win team, it seems. So along the line, they can't upset one of these top teams. I mean, they could ruin somebody's season. I'll give them that, but I just don't think that they're going to be contending for the conference. Iowa, that's another team that could upset one of these better teams, but at the same time, they're not going to be winning the conference. Michigan, are you freaking kidding me? To me, Michigan is a joke. They have been for years. I mean, I think all that needs to be said, NCAA football 14, they had Denard Robinson on the cover. Enough fucking said. What a joke. But that's my number 4 team. Number 3, I did go with the ACC myself. Obviously, the cream of the crop, Florida State, return Jameis Winston, Heisman Trophy winner. These guys are loaded. And even last year, I mean, like you mentioned Clemson, but Florida State demolished those guys last year with Boyd, Watkins, McDowell, Bryant. Well, Clemson lost all these guys. I think Florida State's going to humiliate them. Like I said, this is clear. You got Florida State than everybody else. Now, I do think teams like Virginia Tech and Miami, same situation as like in the Big Ten. They could upset some people along the way, but at the end of the day, I just don't see them competing for the conference. This conference is Florida State's to lose. And I know we know some Miami fans that constantly think that they're going to go 12-0, but I mean, let's be serious. Let's be serious here. I mean, until you win the conference, I mean, you can't sit here. I mean, in my personal opinion, you can't sit here and say you're going to win a national title. I mean, at least go out and win the conference. I mean, they haven't even won the ACC since arriving in the ACC. So until you win the conference, I don't think you talk national title. Period. So, and like you mentioned, Duke. Duke did have 10 wins last year, but I think that's a sign of how weak the ACC is, really, other than Florida State. Since when does Duke get 10 wins? I mean, this is football. This is not basketball. And I mean, and when they played Florida State in the ACC championship, they got demolished. I mean, they can't compete with any real contender. So you've got Florida State and everybody else that beats the hell out of each other. But yeah, that's my pick at number 3. Number 2, I'm with you, the Pac-12. I think it's an obvious choice that USC will get better with the loss of dumbass, a.k.a. Lane Kiffin. Granted, I don't think they're going to win the conference, but I do think they're going to improve. Of course, you've got your big boys. You got Oregon and Stanford, and I'm actually picking Oregon to win the Pac-12. And Stanford's one of those teams that could ruin Oregon's day. Like, they've done it before, so it wouldn't surprise me if they do it again. I mean, Stanford plays some tough defense out there. They seem to consistently have a pretty good defense, so I will give them that. Of course, you got teams like, now you were talking about Washington State and Oregon State. I mean, these are teams, in my opinion, that they're just there. They're just there to fill spots. I mean, they're to me, they're not real competitors. But I will agree with you as far as UCLA. I do think that they're going to be good. They could definitely upset somebody. They could ruin somebody's national championship hopes real quick, like. But I mean, yeah, you got of course Arizona and Arizona State that I don't expect really too much for them. But I say the top half of the conference is pretty solid. So it's not like everybody in the conference is a walkover. So I put them at number 2. My obvious number 1, the SEC. Now, I think it's obvious that you've got teams like LSU. Of course, we don't know what Texas A&M is going to do without Johnny Manziel. That remains to be seen. Of course, I don't see them being as effective as they have been in the last few years because, let's be real, Johnny Manziel, he made that team go. Without Manziel, there was no A&M. Of course, you got South Carolina and Georgia. I think it's a popular prediction to either choose South Carolina or Georgia to win the East. We can get into South Carolina and Georgia a little later, but even our bottom feeders, I'm not going to say all of them, but you got teams like Vanderbilt. Last couple of years, they've won 9 games. I can't remember how long it's been, but last year when Vanderbilt they beat us, and they beat Tennessee. I'm trying to remember a stat because I looked at it and I can't remember how. And did Vanderbilt beat Florida too?
Everybody else did.
Okay, I can't remember if Vanderbilt did, but there was a stat I was looking at that Vanderbilt has not accomplished that feat, and I can't remember how long. There was something I read, but that just goes to show Vanderbilt is improving. I mean, they're able to compete now with some of the big boys. I mean, we know they changed coaches, but we'll see how that goes. But as of right now, you got to look at them as a team. You can't just overlook them anymore, I guess is a good way to put it. Then you got teams like Kentucky and Tennessee. Now, Kentucky, we understand that they're bad. They've always been bad, but then you got Tennessee. Well, Uncle Lou, you've got a pretty popular belief on the University of Tennessee. What was it you were saying earlier about the University of Tennessee?
Real quick, Vanderbilt beat Florida 34-17 last year. So.
Okay. So I was right.
Way to go, Commodores. Yep, beat Tennessee too, which was amazing. And if anyone's wondering, they beat Wake Forest too. So if you want to compare smart schools from the ACC to smart schools from the SEC, Vanderbilt beat Wake Forest. So that's all there is to that. But what were you asking me, sir?
You said, I know we were talking earlier, and we got to talking about Tennessee and how far they've fallen off. This is a team that, in the past, you had to look at them as being one of the top contenders, and now they've just completely fallen off. But I found your point of view rather interesting.
Well, if you're a Tennessee fan, I mean, you have to be kicking yourself in the rear end. How have you fallen so far in so little time? You're the state school of Tennessee. When people think about college football in Tennessee, they think about the Tennessee Volunteers. You're well on your way, Tennessee, to becoming the third best team in your state. Middle Tennessee is no joke, so schedule them if you want to, but I don't recommend it. Vanderbilt now owns you. You're stuck in the 5, 6, 7, 8 wins if you're lucky range. You've had a losing record for 4 or 5 years now. You can't make a bowl game. You're projected by almost everybody that knows what they're talking about to go 4-8 this year, which is going to include another loss to Vandy. And look at your coaching carousel. Okay, you have Butch Jones because he did such a good job at North Carolina in the ACC. Okay, scratch that. All right. You tried to hire the son of a legend, Derek Dooley. Well, we all know how that worked out for you. And before that, Lane Kiffin. Now, people were scratching their heads when you hired this ass clown, but you went ahead and hired him anyway. And ever since you did that, you have been the joke and the laughing stock of the SEC. So, Tennessee, if you're listening, and I'm pretty sure that you are the new South Carolina of the SEC East, people. You guys are embarrassing the SEC. And then, to top it all off, you go out and you schedule Oregon and get mollywopped. They put 100 points up on you in 2 years. Now you're playing in Norman this year, Oklahoma. You're going to go up there and get run off the field. What are you doing? Ever since y'all ran Fat Boy Fulmer out of town, you've been in a downward spiral. You people were calling for his head on a silver platter. Why? Because he won a title 10 years ago and had a couple of bad years, and y'all ran him out of town. You people in Tennessee would give your one good tooth to have Philip Fulmer back. And you ran him out of town. So guess what? You got what you deserved. You ran off the only decent coach you had. You hired a professional scam artist, Lane Kiffin, who came in long enough to father a couple of bastard children in the hills of Tennessee, and then hauled ass for Beverly Hills. You hired Derek Dooley because Vince Dooley's too old. That doesn't work out. And you hired Derek Dooley away from Louisiana Tech. You know why you away from Louisiana Tech? Because no one else wanted the job. No one else wanted it. How sad that one of the so-called big boys of the SEC can't even get a coach. It's pathetic. You guys are embarrassing yourselves. And more importantly, to Uncle Lou, you're embarrassing the SEC. So stop scheduling Oregon. Stop scheduling Oklahoma. You have to schedule Vanderbilt because they're in your half of the conference. But beat Vanderbilt, would you? You don't have to beat Florida. You don't have to beat Carolina. God knows you're not going to beat Georgia. But beat Vanderbilt. Schedule a couple of cupcakes. Find a way to get the 6 wins. Go to the Music City Bowl. You don't even have to get a hotel. You can drive to the game and back in the same day. But just stop what you're doing. You're an embarrassment, and that's all I have. I'm sweating now, and I'm got aggravated now.
Well, I mean, what you said on them to beat Florida, that's really kind of not. That's just not going to happen. It's not that they are going to beat Florida. They can't beat Florida. What is it now? What, 9 years in a row? Florida, 9 or 10 wins. Is that about right? Florida's beat Tennessee in a row.
Yeah, Florida
like that.
Tennessee,
I mean,
like
Florida
beat Georgia.
Florida went 4-8 for God's sakes last year.
Yeah.
On Florida's worst year in like 30 years, they beat the shit out of Tennessee. Like how, how do you lose to a team that goes 4-8? I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
Nobody has the will to lose like Tennessee.
Well, apparently the Kiffin is strong with Tennessee, but the problem I have with Tennessee is the fact that most of their fans, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of their fans, for fuck's sake, they still think they're living in the Peyton Manning era. They talk like they're all this and that. I mean, if Georgia had 4 or 5 losing seasons in a row, there's no way I'm going to sit here and just automatically assume that we're gonna just run over everybody. You got Tennessee fans that actually believe they're gonna beat Oklahoma. Like how? Yeah. How? Like what are y'all smoking? Like you guys are up in the clouds huffing reefer through a freaking Craftsman socket wrench or something. I mean, you guys are out there. I understand that you got good history and all, but this is 2014. You've had 4 losing seasons in a row. In our game last year, I mean, you guys like to brag, we barely beat you, but we suffered, 4 or 5 season-ending injuries that game. Okay, our second and third stringers still was hanging with y'all starters. See, that's the thing. We were playing with a lot of second and third stringers, and they still got the win. I mean,
yeah.